Okay, so let's start off with a little bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. When not speaking, please mute your microphones. You may ask questions by writing them into the chat or waiting for the question and answer period at the end of the meeting. And this presentation will be posted to the OSSE website. Our agenda this morning is we did our welcome and our introduction. We're going to give you an overview of the 21st Century Program, the purpose of the request for applications, and then we're going to review the application process, the overview of EGMS, and then technical assistance and questions at the end. You have the opportunity to meet Dr. Valerie Brown, who is our program specialist, Alex Mackey, who is our grant specialist, myself as the state director, and then we have a director of special populations and programs, which is Karen Rivas. Let's jump into the program overview. The purpose of 21st Century Programs, which are funded by the Department of Education and managed by OSSE, is designed to provide academic enrichment for students in all grades, particularly those in the high poverty areas. Our goal is to support students to meet the challenging state and local standards. In addition to the academic support, we also want a broad array of additional enrichment programs and activities. And that could be a wide variety of things. It could be anything related to STEM, anything related to the arts, drug and violence prevention programs, counseling, art, music, sports, and other recreation activities. One of the main points that I'd like to say on this slide is that providing opportunities for academic enrichment is a key factor. You also need to make sure that where students are participating is in a safe place. The time that programs can operate are before school, after school, weekends and holidays, or the summer. Programs must partner with community groups and schools to support the students. One other component that's extremely important is the fact that you have to be able to work with the families of the students that you are serving in the programs, and they have to have opportunities for literacy and related educational development. A community learning center. I'm going to try really hard not to read to you, but this one I will, because I think it's important. A community learning center is an entity that provides academic enrichment opportunities during non-school hours for children, particularly students who attend high poverty and low performing schools. These programs help students meet state and local standards in core academic subjects such as reading and math. They offer students a broad array of enrichment activities that can complement their regular academic programs and offer literacy and other educational services to the families of participating children. A big hint here would be all of these components should be in the applications. The required program scheduling is that you need to have a minimum number of hours during the school year. And we have made that so that it depends on the grade level. Pre-K through grade 8 is 3 hours per day for 4 days a week. For 25 weeks, at least 300 hours. Grades 9 through 12, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week for 25 weeks, which is at least 225 hours. Anything that you are doing with the adults does not contribute to these minimum hours. Those are the hours for students. And I already said that it can be offered before school, after school, during the weekends, holidays, or non-school weekdays. Funds may not be used to support programs that only operate during the summer months. So you have to have at least a school year program. You may have school year and summer. By statute, and we follow very closely to the law, schools that are eligible as Title I schools have at least 40% of students that are low income. Although we are not specifically using the STAR accountability framework, but if they fit into that, then they are also eligible. And students who may be at risk for failure, dropping out of school, involvement in criminal or delinquent activities, or who lack strong positive role models. As far as eligible applicant organizations, public and private organizations may serve 21st century students. Those programs whose funding ends September 30th are eligible to apply. All other current awardees are not eligible at this time. Please understand that this is a competitive application process and not all applicants will receive funding. The award size.
You would end.
Award sizes are going to vary, but you are able to ask for up to 2,225 students per proposed student. You do not have to match funding. The award period is for 5 years, contingent on available funding. They can only supplement and not supplant, and you receive the same amount of funds each year, contingent upon funding. You also have to make sure that you demonstrate progress and you're compliant. The program design, it must align with DC's academic standards. Homework help does not constitute academic programming. It can be part of your program, but it cannot be what you consider to be your academic enrichment. The instructional practices have to be high quality and research-based. The programming has to be delivered outside of the regular school day, and it has to complement the academic program that students are doing during the school day. You must have certain roles, and 2 of them are the program director and a site coordinator per site. For the locations, it can be in the school or it can be at the community-based facility. You have to post your hours, locations, and your activity schedule. You need to make sure that you have the appropriate equipment, security, and other resources to make sure that students are safe and that they have a safe transport to and from the center and to home. You need to make sure that you have background checks, and tuberculosis checks are required for all staffing who are working directly with students. As I said, a full-time project director is required and a site coordinator per site is required. Some examples of program activities could be tutoring or mentoring. It could be science, technology, engineering, and math. It could be youth development, leadership. It could be counseling. I mean, we have a wide variety of activities in which students can take part. And that list is not, let me go back for a second. There are other activities that would work. So this is just such as, is not limited to. There's a pre-screened external list of organizations, which is on the website. You are not required to contract or partner with those organizations. And because they are there, does not mean that we are endorsing them. Requests for applications and related materials.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an opportunity to go over the RFA with you all. So the RFA stands for Request for Applications. This outlines the process to submit an application, and it contains all the information required to complete that application. Some of the information that is contained within it includes background about the program, requirements for program operations, such as minimum site hours, a full list of the questions that are included in the application, and the weight of each application section when being scored. In addition to the RFA, there are several other documents that are available on OSSE's 21st Century website. This includes application guidance, frequently asked questions, resources, a scoring rubric, and documents that may be required or are required for the application as well, including a partner attestation form, which we'll go over later, program-specific assurances that you'll be required to agree to, and other post-application documentation that will be your responsibility to complete in the event that you are selected for an award. So we'll take a look at the application process itself first. And we'll begin with things that need to be completed in advance of submitting an application. The first is familiarity and access to what's called the Enterprise Grants Management System, or EGMS. EGMS is the online web portal where applications are created and submitted. So they cannot be submitted on paper or by email. They must be submitted in EGMS. And EGMS can be accessed at the link that you see on the screen, grants.osse.dc.gov/. In order to create an application and submit an application in EGMS, you have to do so as part of your organization. And in order to create an organizational account, you need your Federal Employee ID number, or FEIN, in a W-9 form. You can log in using the forgot password link to see if you or your organization already have an account. There is a new user link button that is available on the website if you do not have an organizational account already. And if you are trying everything on the website, you can't figure out whether or not you have an account or you can't access it, please contact the EGMS help team at osse.callcenter@dc.gov. It can take up to 48 hours for the credentialing process to be completed, so this is something that should be done well in advance of the application deadline. Once you are in EGMS, there is a component of the process called central data. You cannot complete your application for 21st Century until central data is completed. It contains a couple of different areas that need to be completed. One is to identify who your organizational contacts are. One is to provide your organization's DUNS number. One is to provide or demonstrate that you have an active System for Award Management, or SAM.gov account. Agree to certain district-wide certifications and assurances, including things about lobbying, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters. And it includes some allocation and funding summaries for those organizations that have grants over the lifetime of their organization, not necessarily related to 21st Century.
One thing that I'd like to add is you may be asked for your UEI, which is your unique, oh goodness, unique entity identification. And you get that from SAMS.gov.
There is a EGMS user manual that includes information about central data. The link is on the screen. And again, you can contact the OSSE Help Desk. They're open 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. And the email again is osse.callcenter@dc.gov. And they can be contacted by phone at 202-719-6500. Now we'll take a look at the elements of the application itself. The first component of the application includes contact information, and it includes your organizational level contact information, including a grant manager contact and a 21st Century program-specific contact. Depending on the structure of your organization, it may be the same person. You can also include up to 5 additional email addresses that receive automated copies of approval and disapproval notices. You also have an opportunity to provide site contact information. So these are the sites that you are proposing to serve during the 2023-2024 school year. You have an opportunity to include what the site name is. So for example, if it's the name of a school, you might include the name of that school. If you are in a community-based center, you might identify that it's in a particular recreation center or wherever it may be, and provide the street address, zip code, and ward number. And optional things to include are contacts for that particular site. You do not need to include site contact information. If you are proposing to serve more than 10 sites, please reach out to our team at 21stcclc.info@dc.gov, and we will work with you. That is because EGMS, as it is structured, only includes up to 10 sites to provide information in. But again, you may offer programming at more than 10 sites, but please contact us if that's the case, and we'll work with you to address that. Another tab on the application, or another area of it, is called funding distribution. And this is where your allocations award if you receive an award. During the application process, you'll notice that the allocation is 0. That is because no applicant has received an award. Your applicants. In the event that you do receive funding and you're working with your grant and you have it, this will change to demonstrate what your allocation is. The application is separated as well into 8 scored components. So you can receive up to 215 points when the application is being scored. And each of these different sections are called criterion in EGMS, contain thematically related questions about your proposed program, and have a particular set of points assigned to them. As we go forward in this presentation, we'll go through each of these different criterion numbers individually, so that you have a chance to see what the questions are. Not every question is included in this presentation, but all the questions are available in the resources and documents that are on the OSSE website. In the application, the first criterion is the executive summary, and this is an opportunity for you to provide an overview and summary of the total proposed project, including the need for the program in the communities that you propose to serve, the names of the schools that you're proposing to serve, the reasons that you have selected your particular target population to be served, a theory of action that identifies your key design elements and the evidence-based practices that lead to those outcomes that you want, the capacity of your proposed program partners to support your proposed program, and an overview of the wards and neighborhoods to be served. The second component of the application is called priority, and this section is optional. If you choose to provide answers and content in this particular section, you may receive additional points on your application that you otherwise would not be available for. Applicants may select none of the competitive priorities, one of the competitive priorities, or 2 of the competitive priorities out of the 5 that exist. We'll go through each of the 5 so that you have a sense of what they are and the points that you may receive for selecting one of the competitive priorities and describing how your organization will meet the priority. The first is the applicant proposes a program where 50% of students, at least, are enrolled in high school with programming that includes credential programs, internships, residencies, workforce development activities, test preparation, or readiness for advanced or honors level courses. And this also includes alternative programs serving grades 9 to 12 within high schools. So if you select that competitive priority and you provide a justification, you may receive a score of up to 5 points, so scored either 0 or 5. The second priority is that the applicant proposes to offer summer programming at sites that combined serve at least 50% of all proposed students, and the summer programming per site is at least 120 hours or more during the summer break period. So again, you may receive 5 points if you provide a quality response to this. The third is if you propose to use the Forum for Youth Investments Program Quality Assessment Tool within your program evaluation. You can do some research on what that tool is and what it involves independently. But again, this one is potentially 0 or 5 points, depending on your response. The fourth is, you'll note, up to 10 points, so either 0 or 10 points. The applicant proposes to implement at least one evidence-based practice that is specifically designed for low-income middle and high school students that increases school day attendance and engagement, reduces rates of chronic absenteeism, and enhances connections between those students and their school, family, and program partners. One important thing to note is that if you select this priority and if you receive those award points and you receive funding, you may be eligible for 1 year of supplemental funding. There is additional information about that in the request for applications. And the fifth priority, 0 or 5 points, is a competitive priority to applicants that both propose to serve students who attend schools identified for improvement pursuant to that particular section, and that are submitted jointly between at least one LEA receiving funds under Title I Part A and at least one public or private community organization. So again, we've shown you 5 potential priorities that you may select from. You may select up to 2 of those 5 priorities, but again, you may select one or none of the priorities as well.
Thank you, Alex. Now we'll be addressing criteria number 3, which is needs and resources assessment. This criteria is very, very important as the others, but here is where the reviewers get an understanding of what the needs are to help determine if there is actually a need for the 21st Century Community Learning Center. And so here you need to provide detailed description of the community needs using the most current data, and that can be both local data and national data. You would also address the gaps in services and highlight that again using data to support the information that you're provided. What are some of the risk factors that the students are experiencing, whether it's has to do with academic performance, behavior, and also the lack of services within the community. We'll also address the family needs. What are some of those needs that family have? Is it unemployment? What are some of the risk factors that are involved? And make sure whatever information you're providing to highlight those risk factors, you're supporting that with current data. It's important to address the need for family literacy. How are you going to support the family so that they can support their students' learning at home and at school? A description of the stakeholders that are partners that will be available to support the programs that you're offering. And again, make sure you address the resources that are available to supplement the programs that you propose to offer. For each program site, you must provide proposed programming, and you also need to suggest to let it know whether you'll be expanding an existing program or it's a new program that you're creating. You also need to provide the list of funding sources that will supplement the program. So if there are other funds that you have that can supplement the program, you would make sure that information is available. And very important, how will the program that you offer support the day school activities? So we can support the school improvement plan for each school that you serve. It's important that you demonstrate in your application that you have the experience to support a 21st century program and how the proposal that you're offering can be shown promise for success so that those programs can be replicated. You also have to demonstrate how the program activities, which should be evidence-based, will complement and enhance the academic performance of the youth that you serve. How those programs will also provide support working families. There are 9 characteristics that suggest what high quality expanded learning looks like, and we'll discuss those in the next slide. And here are the 9. Partnership that exists between the community learning center, the schools, goal setting, strong management and sustainability, quality after school staffing, that's very important, attention to safety, health, and nutrition issues, strong involvement of families. We all know that with the involvement of family, we can get so much done for our students. Enriching learning opportunities, linkages between the school day and after school personnel. It's very important that you work closely with the school so you can have a better understanding of what the needs of the students are and how you can best support the school to supplement what's being offered in the school day. Evidence-based instructional activities and practices, weekly schedules of activities, and an evaluation of program progress and effectiveness. Criteria 4, evidence-based program design. You must use evidence-based research that support the services and activities that you're offering. It's so important for us to list what we want to do. And many times I've seen applications where there are more topics rather than activities that are supported by evidence-based practices. So it's important that you list those and not just tell us what you're going to do, but how you're going to, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and that is how you're going to implement these activities. And what are the outcomes? What are the benefits to the students and the parents? Viewers want to see that connection. So avoid just listing topics that you want to cover. Make sure you're listing evidence-based activities, what those activities will, how those activities will be implemented, and what are the outcomes, how they will benefit students and families, especially as it relates to supporting learning and also behavior. Describe the alignment between the proposed program and each of the 9 characteristics of a high quality extended learning that we discussed earlier. Describe how the proposed instructional practices are aligned to the academic activities of the students, day school activities. And describe how those activities will help students to meet their state and local student achievement standards. Describe how the proposed program will provide students with non-academic positive outcomes, but not limited to social and emotional development. Evidence-based design, again, applicant must have at least 6 performance measures which are directly aligned to the Department of Education Government Performance and Results Act, which we call GEPRA. A template is provided in the RFA to help with the writing of these performance measures. The applicants must write out the performance measures for their program, making adjustment to the GEPRA measures only to account for the grade levels served by the program. The activities described must occur to meet the performance measures. Describe the milestones in the process of meeting the performance measures, and describe the metrics for how progress towards these measures will be assessed. And here are the GEPRA measures and indicators. Percentage of students in grades 4 participate in 21st programming during the school year and summer who demonstrate growth in reading and language arts on state assessment. Percentage of students in grade 4 to 8 participate in a 21st century programming during the school year, and some who demonstrate growth in mathematics on state assessment. Percentage of students in grades 7 through 8 and 10 through 12 at 10 and 21st century programming during the school year in summer with a prior year unweighted grade point average of less than 3.0, who demonstrated an improved GPA. Percentage of students in grades 1 through 12 participated in 21st century during the school year who had a school day attendance rate at or below 90% in the prior school year and demonstrated an improved attendance rate in the current school. So this is addressing attendance. This one is addressing suspension. The percentage of students in grade 1 through 12 attending the program during the school year and some who experienced a decrease in school suspensions compared to the previous school year. And finally, percentage of students in grades 1 through 5% participated in the 21st century program in the school year, and some who demonstrated an improvement in teacher-reported engagement in learning. Evidence-based program design. And this is optional. You may write 2 additional performance measures that are specific to the applicant's program and not necessarily to the GEPRA measures. A list of approved subjects that these performance measures must be connected to or outlined in the RFA. That's reading, literacy, math, science, tutoring, or character education. So you can develop an additional 2 performance measures around any of those 2 topics. Any of those topics. For each proposed optional performance measure, applicants must develop SMART objective. Describe the activities that will be occurred to meet the performance measures, describe the milestones and the process of meeting the performance measures, and describe the metrics for how progress towards performance measures will be assessed. Program management and implementation. Here you must provide evidence-based academic enrichment activities to help students, particularly students attending low performance schools, to meet state and local academic standards in the core academic subjects, such as English, language arts, math, and science. And again, we need more than just topics. And reviewers want to see evidence-based practices that have been used and have shown results. So they have a clear understanding of what will be done. And again, what will be done, how the activities will be implemented, and what are the outcomes that are expected from these activities, how these activities will support the academic performance of the students. Again, the instructional program activities should be embedded in all 9 components of the high quality after school programs that we discussed earlier. And please make note that the academic programming includes instruction. This does not include homework. Homework is supplemental. It's not academic instruction. We expect that applicants will offer, programs will offer instruction in math, reading, science, and homework does not take the place of that. We also expect students to be offered social skills, teamwork, examples of teamwork, leadership and competition, interactive project-based learning, recreational activities, and we have examples here: arts, sports, music, dance, cooking. There's so many other activities that are listed in the RFA that we can offer. Applicants must describe the approaches that will be incorporated into the proposed 21st century program for each of the 3 domains, including at least one of the 9 characteristics of high quality extended learning programs. And again, when you write these activities, make sure the reviewers understand exactly what you're talking about. So when they read the information that you have provided, they can visualize exactly what the program is going to look like. They can say, this is going to be a good program because you have made it very clear what you're trying to do and what the outcomes will be once those activities are implemented. Program management and implementation, literacy and related educational programs for parents. You must describe what are some of the activities that you will be offering to parents that will help parents to support learning at home and school. You must be specific about it. So writing something like, family nights, it's not telling a reviewer exactly what will be taking place during family nights. You have to state clearly what are some of those activities that you will be offering. Is it going to be a math activity where you're teaching parents how they can help their students to do math at, like math assignment at home, or you're teaching them how to read to their students at home, or even financial literacy. But please state specifically what those activities are that you will be offering during family night. Program implementation and timeline. Sorry. You also need to have a timeline to show when these activities will be offered, especially the major activities. It's important for you to do that. Service and activities must demonstrate that the 21st century program will expand learning opportunities and connect the program to students' daily classroom work. And that is where you have to work closely with the teachers to know exactly what are some of the activities being offered at school, so you can supplement those activities during programming. Partnership. It's very important that you have partners that can support the program that you're offering. And this can be done through program delivery, just working with partners to develop the programs that you're offering, the activities that you're offering, to have some form of sustainability with your program. Partners' role must be clearly stated. Who will be doing what, when it will be done, and how it will be done. What are the anticipated results? Sign letters of commitment or memorandum of understanding that clearly indicates the role capacity of each partner organization must be provided. Applicants must describe how the students will be recruited and what are their plans to retain the students. It's very important that the cohort of students that you start the program with, that you're able to complete the year with those students. Because if you have students who are just running in and out of the program, they're not going to benefit from what you're offering. So it's important to recruit your students early and have the type of activities that will sustain the students and want them to come to the program. Bear in mind that in the District of Columbia, we have many programs, and students will shop you. They will go to one program today, and many students may be registered for different programs, and they'll go to the ones that offering them the most fun. So make sure the activities that you're offering, it's creating opportunities for learning and also fun, because it's important to have consistency in cohort, right? So we don't have like a revolving door, students just spending a few hours on the program and not really benefiting from the program because they're not coming as often as they should. How students will travel safely to and from the center and home is very important. You must know about the students' whereabouts at all times. How the proposed program will ensure equitable access to the participants is important. That's a requirement. Therefore, students with disability, you should make sure that the program is conducive for their learning also, their participation. How the program will ensure English learners receive meaningful access to the program must also be a priority for applicants. How information about the program is disseminated is important. You need to ensure that participants who do not speak English, that information is provided in their language so they too can be aware of the program and be able to participate in the program. How program staff will work with the schools and teachers is a priority. That's the way we're going to know how best we can serve the students. What are some of the needs that the students have? And this should be done while you're developing the program, so you can maintain a very good working relationship with the school. How the program schedule will meet the schedule of working families is very important. So you should be working with parents in developing your program so you understand what their needs are and how you can best support them. How students and families will access technology, how students will be supervised using the internet, and how the program will provide a safe environment for students and staff for all requirements that you must meet. Staffing. It's important that you recruit the staff that can serve students in a way that they can benefit from the program. It's important to have qualified staff and also to be able to retain your staff. Safety related to training to be conducted within a timeline. All that you must provide that information. How program staff will offer differentiated and varied programming and academic program and enrichment and recreational activities must be demonstrated in your application. The type of professional development that you will offer, you need to state that. Just saying you will offer professional development is not helpful. State specifically what you will do, and if you want to put a timeline in there, that's important. What type of conferences or external training that they will participate in, all that is important. And it's also important that you provide professional development for not just for staff, but also for volunteers. Alex?
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, thank you. So next up, we'll talk about program evaluation and monitoring. So in your application, you need to include information about how you will conduct assessments and periodic evaluations to refine, improve, and strengthen your program, including activities, and to refine measurable goals for the program as well. Some of the different questions that you'll be asked to respond to in your application include what type of data you'll be using, who will be responsible for collecting it, the frequency of that data collection, how the proposed performance measures relate to the program's intended outcomes. So those include both the required GPRA performance measures as well as the additional 2 that are optional. How you will use these routine internal evaluations, how they will be shared with parents and other stakeholders, the qualifications required of an external evaluator or a third-party evaluator and how you will select them, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. The continuous improvement activities that will occur based on the outcomes of your evaluations and your organization's capacity to access and collect appropriate evaluation data. The seventh criterion is sustainability. This is a description of a preliminary plan for how the Community Learning Center and its benefits will continue after this federal grant funding has ended from OSSE. And there's three components that you'll be responding to. One is evidence of commitment of the program partners, which might include things like facilities, continued supplies and equipment, or in-kind contributions. How different sources of funding will be cooperatively utilized or braided and leveraged against one another for the most effective use of public resources. And a preliminary plan for sustaining the Community Learning Center or centers after this particular component of federal funding ends. Criterion 8 is the budget, which in EGMS is called Detailed Planning Expenditures. Applicants may request up to $2,225 per student proposed to be served, and you should budget for the same amount of funds per year. There are 6 budget categories that you'll be inputting information into. 1 is salaries and benefits, 2 is professional services, 3 is equipment, 4 is supplies and materials, 5 is fixed property costs, and number 6 is other objects. We'll take a look at each one of these now. One thing to note is that you cannot divert more than 20% of your total grant award to any single other entity, including but not limited to partners. And at a minimum, applicants must maintain direct control of 51% or more of the total grant award during each award period. Additionally, applicants cannot divest oversight of the program, administration, or implementation to another agency under any circumstance. These funds cannot be used as a pass-through to other agencies as well. This is the salaries and benefits section. Salaries and benefits only include individuals who are paid as program staff, not contractors. You have to include the required positions that we talked about earlier. That includes a project director and 1 site coordinator per site. Benefits may be included, but there are limits on the percentage of a staff salary that can be paid as benefits, so 23% for full-time, 8% for part-time. Please do not include staff names when completing the budget component of your application. You can put TBD instead. In EGMS, you are also classifying each staff member or expenditure by a particular category of expenditure. So 1 is 10 instruction. There's 20 support services, 30 administration, 40 operations and maintenance, and 50 student transportation. So an after-school teacher, for example, would count as instruction, whereas somebody who might be like a curriculum developer could be something like the support services, providing additional support to those teachers. There is a guide in EGMS to help you properly categorize how each salary is classified. Professional services includes, for the most part, contractors. This includes an external evaluation service. It's important to note that this external evaluation cannot exceed 8% of the total budget. That is per year, not over the lifetime of the program. It's both 8% per year, 8% for the total. And it's important to, once again, note that you have to categorize each expenditure that is in the professional services category by those same different indicators: instruction support services, administration, operations and maintenance, and student transportation. And once again, there is a guide in EGMS for how to make those classifications. Equipment is any single item costing more than $5,000 per unit. A car is an example, over $5,000 per unit, but computers that cost $1,000 each, if you bought 6 of them, $6,000 total would not be equipment because each computer is less than $5,000. Supplies and materials are any items that cost less than $5,000 per unit. So general supplies, textbooks, instructional aids, or software, books, testing materials. And you'll also be categorizing these by those same different areas: instruction, support services, etc. Fixed property costs are prorated costs associated with the maintenance of properties in which the community learning center takes place. So perhaps you'll be renting equipment or a vehicle, renting property, utilities, insurances, or cleaning services. Again, those are prorated costs, and it's also, you'll be classifying those. And other objects include any expenses that are not better categorized in any of the other sections, including dues and fees, conference fees, travel fees, other transportation costs. Those are also classified and categorized. There are sections of the EGMS application that are called attachments, but you'll actually just be typing into it for the most part, unless you have more than 10 sites. Attachment A is called Program Summary, and this is where you'll identify each of the different sites and some information about those sites, including the percentage of students at that site who are classified as at risk, percent English language learners, the estimated number of students to be served at the site, the estimated number of adults to be served at the site, whether or not the school site is classified as a Title I program, and its classification as Comprehensive Support and Improvement 1, 2, or Targeted Support based on OSSE's STAR Accountability Framework. And as a quick note, if your community learning center is not located at a school, you should use school data from which most of your 21st century program participants attend. Attachment B is a continuation of Attachment A. It's the populations served checklist. So once again, it's dependent on the site. So the first is the populations that will be served at each site. You'll have an opportunity to use checkboxes to identify if preschool students, elementary school students, middle school students, high school students, and/or adults will be served. The services to be provided. So there's a long list of approved services, and they include things like academic instruction, character education. I think we've gone through some of these before. You'll use checkboxes to indicate the ones that will be provided at that site. And then there's a text box to provide a description of those different services that you have selected. And then time periods when programming is offered at each site as well. There are checkboxes for this. And you will check before school, after school, holidays, weekends, and/or summer. And attachment C is a continuation of attachments A and B. And so you'll be providing information for each different site individually. The first is you'll be identifying what the scheduling is for them. So you'll include start and end dates and the total number of days of programming between your start and end dates, your total number of weekly hours on average, and the hours of operation per day of the week. So for example, if you select that you'll be providing services after school, you'll indicate which days of the week you'll be providing services after school and what the hours of operation are per day. So if you're offering services at more than 10 sites or proposing to, once again, please contact OSSE for further instructions because EGMS only includes space for 10 sites. There is an attachment D as well, and attachment D is where you have an opportunity to list your community partnerships and identify what type of partners they are. So for example, if you're partnering with an institution of higher education, you get to indicate that that you are partnering with that one. So there's a variety of different organization types, and you'll indicate which ones are your partners, and you'll also list them out. You will also need to provide a signed partnership attestation form for each named partner in the list. The form is available in the RFA, and a Word version of it is available on the OSSE website. And it's important to note that if your organization is an LEA or a local education agency, and you're proposing a program site located in a school, that LEA must be a program partner and provide a signed partner attestation form. And if you are proposing multiple sites, but they are all within the same LEA's schools, you only need one partner attestation form because the LEA has already signed off on that. Not one partner attestation form per site. The partner attestation forms are signed by an authorized representative of the LEA. That individual is different depending on the LEA, so you'll need to contact and work with them to identify who that would be. There is a component of the application that's called budget consolidation, and this is the flexibility only available to LEAs implementing school-wide programs that want to consolidate their 21st century funds into a school-wide program pool of funds. Again, this is only for LEAs. If you choose to do so, an LEA does not need to maintain separate fiscal accounting records for them, but does need to continue to develop and implement 21st century aligned programming. There's some other information on this slide as well. Again, this only applies to LEAs, and there's a particular slide or a particular component of the application in EGMS where this information is. There is also a program budget summary page, and this is where you will identify the budget request for years 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is based on those different sections that we looked at: salaries and benefits, professional services, supplies and equipment, or supplies and materials, equipment, other costs, and fixed property costs. And as applicable, you may also include in-kind contributions if you choose to. Assurances are also in the EGMS application, and organizations must agree to comply with these federal, state, and local health and safety standards and civil rights protections for program employees and participants. All organizations must have these different things in place, and some examples are included in the bullet points below. So, for example, organizations must have documentation identifying that their employees have passed background and tuberculosis checks, that you have emergency and safety procedures on file, and some other ones. These are in the application. Please review them. You must agree to them in advance of being able to submit your application. And finally, we just have some tips for writing a strong application. So number one is to understand the purpose of the grant. Pay attention to the information requested in the RFA. Number two, justify the need for the program by clearly stating the needs of the target population. Number three, provide adequate detail for your program design and implementation that is relevant and clear for reviewers of your application. The next one is to limit the information that you're providing about relevant theories and discuss in detail evidence-based activities. Tell the reviewers how the proposed activities will address the identified needs of students and families, how the activities and services will improve academic performance and behavior, and how parents will be supported. Provide clear and specific relevant information, avoid conflicting information, and spend adequate time developing your application as well.
So, the application review. The deadline and follow-up. All applications and supporting documentation are due by 12 p.m. on August 11th. Once it is submitted, a panel composed of external, neutral, qualified professional individuals who have been selected for their unique qualifications in the field of elementary and secondary education and youth development will review and score all the components of each application submitted. We reserve the right to inspect the proposed 21st century program sites and facilities before an award is approved, and we make the final decision on all awards. Tell you a little bit about the review panel. It's going to be a panel of 3 individuals who have been selected for at least one of the following qualifications. They have knowledge of after-school learning opportunities. They have experience in an educated-related field, STEM education experience, specialized education, English learner experience, social and emotional learning experience. They have expertise working with a variety of community members to forge meaningful partnerships, and they have previous experience or expertise as a grant reviewer. The applications will be scored based on these criteria. The final score assigned by the application review team based on the scoring indicators in RFA, availability of funds, and our approval. This is a competitive application process, and submission of an application does not guarantee that we'll be selected for funding. The notice of funding opportunity was published on June 14th. The release was June 28th, and that was the same time that EGMS opened. All questions are due to OSSE for the public question and answer by July 19th. And then we will post that on our website, all the questions and answers. The application is due on the 11th. And then the peer review of the applications is anticipated to be August and September. And then award notifications are announced. And then we will do a post-award training. And then new programs must begin on October 1st. Okay, now is the time that we're going to open some things up to questions. Please understand that the questions that we will answer are directly related to our presentation. Other questions we will hold and put in the Q&A, which will be posted after July 19th. Any questions that you do have, please submit them to our email address, 21stcclc.info@dc.gov. I will open, first we will look at the questions that are in the chat that we're able to respond to. Let me go back to the beginning because there are quite a few questions, and some of them, thank you, Margot, for putting some responses, especially that are specifically related to DCPS. All right, so Jerry started off, the guidance seems to indicate you C and A only choose a max of 2, correct? I probably need a little bit more information for that question.
That
Dr.
actually,
Clay, I can
Matt
answer this one.
that. Yeah, Matt.
There are 5 competitive priorities. Applicants may select up to 2 of those.
Okay, thank you. All right. Does priority 4 have to be to serve middle and high school students? Or if we are pre-K to 8, is it okay if we serve middle school students? The answer to that is it's okay if you serve middle school students. Can the performance measures overlap with the objective? The RFA calls for 5 to 7 performance measures and 6 to 8 measurable objectives. Yes.
That,
Alex, were you going to jump in and say something?
Yes. So performance measures includes the GPRA measures. So there are 6 GPRA measures. Those are required. They're based on the 5 federal GPRA measures. We have split one of them into both language arts and math. And there are 2 optional ones. So all applicants must provide information for the GPRA measures, but the 2 optional ones do not need to be completed. They're optional.
Are points awarded for performance indicators beyond the required number of GPRA? There are no additional points if that's what you are asking. Since DCPS does not calculate GPA for elementary and middle school students, how should programs serving those students handle the GPA related GPRA? There is a table that will help you translate GPA into other forms, whether it's by grades or numbers.
So you're saying we should calculate GPA on our own then, based on course grades?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Alex, you want to add more to that?
In the event that subgrantees receive funding, we will work with you to help best identify the way to do it. However, for the application, it's important to use GPA or an equivalent measure for that particular application component.
Correct.
I guess my question is, to what extent can we modify the language of the GPRA? For example, for this GPA one, could we write that GPRA measure as being related to fall to spring course grade improvement rather than GPA, or do we have to stick exactly to the language of the GPRA?
For now, you should stick to the language of the GPRA.
Okay.
Can I follow up with a question?
Sure.
You were Alex was answering about the performance measures. I just want to make sure, and it just makes me something that's in my head and not confusing other people.
Mhm.
But when we're talking about those 6 to 8, and I understood there's 6 required and 2 optional, but then there aren't a separate set of performance, there aren't a separate set of measurable objectives. The terminology is interchangeable, is that correct? So we're not talking about a different set of outcomes when we talk about measurable objectives. They are those 6 required and those 2 additional GPRA. Is that correct? Or are they distinct entities, the measurable objectives?
They are
You
the
are
6
correct.
That is correct, right? They are the 6 GPRA and then 2 other performance measures,
Okay.
if you
thank
choose to do those.
Sorry for the confusion. Thank you.
No, that's okay. We want to make sure that you're clear. For partner attestation purposes, who must sign off for each school partner versus DCPS, the school? Thank you, Margot, for putting the information in. They will be having a policy palooza virtual on July 13th from 11 to 12:30, which will help you answer that. Individual schools and DCPS cannot sign partner attestations. Let's see, what else? If we already have an MOU in place with DCPS because of funding requirements with another funding, is it okay? Or does the MOU need to be specific to 21st century? Thank you, Margaret, for your response. That's a question for DCPS in their after-school office.
No, it's a question for, sorry, clarifying. It's a question for the partnerships team. I believe
Yes,
that an existing MOA with DCPS should cover an organization's participation as a 21st century grantee. However, for the grant application, you'll need to get those partner attestation forms processed, and those should be sent as quickly as possible to the partnerships team so that they can be addressed. Because I'm pretty confident that no principal is actually authorized to sign one independently. They may do it, but that doesn't mean that it was the right thing to do.
Thank you. Annual evaluation reports are now required in odd grant years 1, 3, and 5, but does data still need to be collected for all of the years? The answer to that is yes. I do not see any mention of the KPIs discussed in our last meeting with AIR. Does this mean that they will not be implemented in FY24? Specifically asking about the school day teacher survey, which OSSE had proposed adding questions to. According to the RFA, only teacher survey data will need to report on is engagement in learning as it appears in GPRA number 5. Is this correct? Yes. Okay, regarding staffing, the frequently asked question states, as a best practice, OSSE finds that to effectively manage and administer the program, no more than 1 full-time employee is needed, depending on the size and scope of the program. Is this 1 full-time staff person per site or center?
Or are you expecting us to only budget for 1 full-time employee for our entire program, depending on the size of the program?
I'm expecting you to fund the number of staff members that you feel that you need to successfully implement your program.
Okay, so the one person is a guidepost, but not,
Correct.
okay.
The video will be posted online. Budgeting for conference attendance. It says must use the organization's established travel and per diem rates, or the GSA travel resources rates. If the organizational rate is different than the GSA rate, the applicant must include the lower of the two costs. It refers us to application guidance, which includes this sample for budgeting, travel for one staff member to attend the Beyond School Hours Conference, including flight, $600, hotel $250 per night for 3 nights, per diem $50 per day, and conference registration fees is $600. The total for these expenditures is $2,000. For Beyond the School Conference in 24, the GS rate for the room is $158, which is FY23 rates, but the hotel room rate for actual 24 conference is $259. Are we able to budget for the actual cost of attending the conference, or do we need to budget on the GSA rates? Okay, so when we are talking about the GSA rates, and Alex, I know you're going to jump in. We are talking about the per diem rates. For the actual conference, is the room is $259, then you're going to budget for the cost of the actual room cost. And the same is true for the travel. Alice, were you going to add to that?
I was not.
Okay, great. I understand that this is a competitive application process. However, is there a list of existing 21st century learning centers that are school-based? It would be helpful to know of existing DCPS schools that are already receiving 21st century funding. I might need a little bit more information on this one, only because when you're saying school-based, are you saying specifically that it's just the school itself that's outside of the programs in DCPS?
No. So my question was if there's a school that might be partnering with a CBO, and the CBO is the lead who is receiving the funding, but their programming is taking place at the school.
I'm going to jump in again. It's Margot from DCPS. There is a list of the sites that where DCPS is operating after school programming for next year, hopefully with 21st century funding applied to them. And it's basically all but 4 of the Title I elementary schools in the city. In addition to that, though, and this is where OSSE has a list, I'm sure, but we do not. There are other organizations that have in the past received 21st century funding and that also operate at some of the same schools. And so there is no comprehensive list that I'm aware of that's publicly available for to include all grantees. But you can click to the DCPS website and look under the after school program page to see the 55 schools where we intend to operate the program next year.
Okay, thank you.
Are all prior state performance measures gone? For example, GEPRA, percentage of students in grades 4 through 8 participating in 21st century program during the school year in summer who demonstrate growth in reading and language arts. Is there a specific percentage of improvement that OSSE has set for DC? It seems that every grantee gets to set their own rates of improvement. For each performance measure, choose a performance target based on your needs assessment. Performance targets should be reasonable yet challenging. For grades pre-K through 8, can we, okay, so that's a different question. Go back.
So Dr. Red-Saffron, there used to be state performance measures in addition to the things that we had to report in the APR. And the state performance measures set actual targets, like 40% of this must have been improved, 75% homework completion improvement, whatever. So are there, it seems, I don't see them yet. Anyway, maybe they exist and I just haven't found them. The state objectives, in a sense, for these GEPRA measures. that determine the percentage of improvement that the state of the District of Columbia wants us to work toward. And we get to set our own, is that correct?
Do you mind if I answer this one, Dr. Kelly?
Sure, please.
So previous application cycles did include state performance measures. They are not included in the FY24 request for applications. So that's answering part of the question. The other portion of it is when you are including the GIPRA measures as those performance measures, you're leaving the language the same, only changing the grades that it applies to, depending on what grades your program proposes to serve. Based on that, there is not any specific guidance beyond what is included in the GIPRA measure. So when it says improvement, that is just improvement.
Okay.
For grades
So
pre-K.
how are we measuring progress towards an objective if there's no numerical target?
The numerical target is improvement over the period that the GIPRA measure indicates, which may be within the year or year over year.
But essentially 2% of the students could improve, or 99%, it's irrelevant, it's just improvement.
The percentage of students who improved, yes, out of the total percentage of students, or the total number of students participating.
You just want us to report results, not whether or not we are attaining a specific objective.
That is fair to say, yes. We have aligned this with the GIPRA measures.
Okay, so is that also true of the 2 additional measures that you can write on your own? Because you talk about SMART performance measures, which would be, I would think that would mean that they would have a numerical target. Is that not true for the additional ones?
You are correct that the additional ones should be based on SMART measures.
Okay.
For grades pre-K through 8, can we exceed the days, weeks, and hours per year requirement, as well as exceed the 2 hours listed on page 11, or do we have to offer 3 hours a day as well? Yes, you can exceed the days, weeks, and hours per year requirements.
So just to be specific, like DCPS would ideally want to do 2.5 hours a day rather than 3. But in doing so, for 172 days of the year, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week instead of 4, we end up with over 400 hours of service rather than 300. So are we complying with that, or do we have to apply saying it's a 3-hour program and working toward a 3-hour program? Like, if we, you see what I'm saying? In the aggregate, we meet more than the days, more than the number of hours listed on page 11, and more than the overall number of service hours and weeks of service, but just not, we do it at 2.5 hours rather than 3. Is that acceptable?
The answer to that is yes.
Great, thank you.
With competitive priority number 5, could I elaborate what it means to be a consortium agreement versus an MOU? Could you clarify how we would submit our application jointly with Title I LEA?
I can answer that one. There is a space in EGMS to upload a signed consortium agreement between 2 eligible entities. Being in a consortium agreement is different than simply having a signed MOU as a partner. A consortium agreement application is being jointly administered by 2 programs, with one of them serving as the lead. There is additional information in the application.
I see one hand up. Tutoring Cafe. Are there any other questions at this time?
Hi, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Oh, sorry about that. It took me a moment to figure out how to come off of mute. As a first-year applicant, I just had a question on how to determine the amount of salary that is allotted for staff and how much the grant would offer as we're doing breakdowns for each staff person.
I believe we had a guide in the during the PowerPoint. Alex, I think it was 23%. I'm not remembering the number specifically.
Yeah, so the only restriction in terms of salaries that you'll find in the material is you can include up to 23% of a staff salary's total salary for benefits. So often benefits are considered as a percentage of an overall salary, 23% for full-time, 8% for part-time. And if you're including other staff members who support the program but are not working exclusively on 21st Century, their salaries must be prorated for the percentage of time that they support the program.
Okay. And can this grant be used in conjunction with any other grants that are offered? For example, if an applicant is being awarded a grant from OSSE or another government office, would they still be able to apply for 21st Century?
Yes.
Thank you.
The only caveat there is that the programs must supplement and not supplant.
Very good. Thank you so much.
I have a question up from Ann.
Hi, I'll even take off my, okay. I have a question about the suspension, GEPRA. We discussed this at the last mandatory meeting, but I wondered, how do we know whether a student has been suspended unless the student tells us?
As far as the partnership that exists between the program and the school, that would be information that you'd be able to get from the school.
Do you think they would tell us, Dr. Kelly?
It actually involves a data request from them. At least for DCPS, it involves doing a data request to get that data for the participants in your program. I don't know how it operates at charter schools, but if you're working through DCPS and you need data of that type, you should be going through either the research request process or the data request. And there's information on the DCPS website for how to get that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Berkey.
Are there any other questions? So once again, if you need to get in contact with us, here's all of our information.
I had one additional question. I'm
sorry.
Sure. I'm trying to be clear here, but there's a piece about sort of calculating how 75% of your proposed number need to be served. Is that 75% of the proposed number across all days of service, or is that a minimum of like X days? In other words, for a student to be considered in that 75%, how many days do they have to have attended, or what percentage of the total offered services do they have to have attended?
Can you repeat that one more time? Make sure I understand your question.
Sure. In the RFA, there's a piece about, 75% of the proposed number to be served must in fact be served. That'll be calculated each year. So from my perspective, I do evaluation attendance. So I'm trying to figure out terms of attendance. Is that 75% figure calculated on like every offered day of service, or a minimum number? In order for a student to fall in there as being served, how many days do they have to have attended? Is there a number that OSSE has, or a target, or how is that determined that they count as youth served?
Okay, I know what you're saying now. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. So I was like, wait a minute, let me run it through my head. You're talking about the 75% per year that
Yes.
students need to participate.
Mhm.
Yes, there is a calculation that if awarded, there'll be more information about that.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, please direct any RFA specific questions to the 21st cclc.info@dc.gov. Please, you can reach out to us, but if it's specifically around the RFA, please email, use that email address. I will tell you that it's a lot easier to reach me by email than it is by phone. So we are here to support you in any way that we can, and we will provide the question and answer resource after July 19th, once we've received all questions. Thank you all very much, and good luck on your applications.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Thank you, Alex.